I have come here today to relate to you an ongoing dramatic social, economic and financial situation taking place in Lebanon today. I have come to you hoping in return for your empathy, understanding and willingness to help. You have strengthened my belief that the Lebanese people's salvation, that Lebanon's salvation lays in your hands. According to the latest Lebanon Economic Monitor study released by the World Bank on June 2021, Lebanon's financial and economic crisis could rank as one of the world's 3 most severe since the mid-19th century. In less than 2 years, the Lebanese lira lost more than 100% of its value against the American dollar. From a value of 1,500 Lebanese lira to the dollar, today the dollar is traded in the black market at 18,000 plus, and the worst is yet to come. The loss of the Lebanese lira value dragged down accordingly salaries and purchase power to the extent that today the average wage that used to equate $1,000 is worth $68. Wages meltdown eroded de facto people's ability to afford food, shelters, and health care, as basic goods are mostly imported. According to the National Institute of Statistics, inflation rose by 119% between May 2020 and May 2021. The World Bank report estimates that more than half of the Lebanese population is likely below the poverty line, and food insecurity among households is found to be 22% during the period of March-April 2021. A World Food Programme survey conducted by the end of 2020 concluded that 41% of households reported challenges in accessing food and other basic needs. The UNICEF latest survey documented the risks that children are exposed to by the escalating crisis in Lebanon. Obviously, more families are forced to resort to negative coping measures, including skipping meals and sending their children to work in most and often hazardous conditions. Even the education sector has gone under severe strain. The increase in poverty rate has led to an exodus of students from private to public schools, and even to higher students dropouts. And schools and teachers and university professors are immigrating. On top of that, people's deposits have been withheld in the banks in an attempt to control the flow of foreign currency out of the country. As a result, any withdrawal of money or transfer of foreign currency, including students' dollars, have been halted. This has dimmed the future of more than 27,000 Lebanese students who went abroad to pursue studies. And despite the adoption of the student dollar law in October 2020, the Lebanese banks still refuse to release the money. The informal capital control also has impaired businesses and commerce's operations, threatening the survival of the private sector. According to the Beirut Traders Association, as many as 50% of Lebanon shops and businesses have closed by the end of 2020. As for the syndicate of restaurants, café, nightclub and pastry owners, 896 venues have closed so far this year, while more than 2,000 establishments were already partly or completely destroyed by the Beirut blast. As a result, the nation's unemployment rate spiked from 28% in February 2020 to nearly 40% by the end of this year. The Lebanese reserve in foreign currency decrease has also led to a commensurate drop in import. Hence, the importation of the necessary merchandise, such as food, medication, and fuel, has been severely restricted in an economy heavily dependent on imports. With the drop of imports of necessary goods, pharmacies can no longer provide for basic medications. So try to figure out the drama that this constitutes for people who have chronic pains and in need of sustainable treatment like kidney or diabetes or cancer diseases. Hospitals too can no longer provide adequate life-saving care due to the restriction on vital medication supply import, including gloves, masks, and serum. And of course, doctors and nurses are immigrating in masses from a country that prided itself to be the hospital of the Middle East. Gas stations have run out of fuel in a country that has never planned a sound alternative public transportation system. So today, in a city such as Beirut, buzzing with traffic jam, the only traffic jam is caused by the infinite lines of cars at gas stations waiting to get 20 liters of gas oil. Electricity is scarcely distributed. Blackouts have become widely spread, lasting up to 22 hours per day in the summer. With the scarcity of fuel and derivatives, power generator can no longer compensate for the lack of electricity. This situation is endangering, of course, the survival of both basic services, such as the internet, which is getting close to shut down. I will not end this horror list without mentioning the devastating effect on our security, infrastructure, and economy caused by intractable crises such as the presence of 1.5 million of Syrian refugees and 400,000 Palestinian refugees on our soil. The August 4th tragedy in the Beirut port that shattered the heart of our cultural and economic capital, killing more than 200 people, injuring 6,000 and plus, of which some for life, and depriving 300,000 people of shelters. The port's explosion has also deprived our country from 40% of its customs revenues and impacted Lebanon's food and medical supply, as the country imports 85% of its food and medicine. Last but not least, the coronavirus pandemic that has ravaged the tourism sector and compounded poverty to hardship. In this horrific scheme, the corona pandemic ranks amongst the worst low. The current social, economic, financial crisis in Lebanon has exacerbated its fragility and its fragmentation and increased the risk of social and civil unrest. The daily sporadic eruption in violence in Tripoli, Baalbek, and other places and cities attest to the deep social angst. The current situation has also exposed the country to a dangerous depletion of resources, including human capital, as brain drain has become an increasingly desperate option. Today, this is the social landscape in Lebanon, a landscape of absolute desolation. It's even worse than the Venezuelan scheme, since Venezuela has compassionate neighbors such as Brazil. As for Lebanon, it is left on its own, with a war-torn Syria at its northern and eastern border, Israel at the south, and the sea in front. Actually, Lebanon finds itself today in the exact situation of the early 20th century that had led your parents or grandparents to immigrate to Brazil. So it's time to act. It is time to give back to your country of ancestors. It is time to build on the immense human bridge that you constitute and that connects Lebanon to Brazil to reach the institutional level. It is time to translate the tremendous influence you have in this country into a real and tangible and sustainable solidarity with the Lebanese people. It is time to think big in a more systematic way to help, to figure out the scheme that goes beyond ad hoc fundraising or medication collection on call. And this is why I'm here today.